As Rudy said, I've been ready for this my whole life. Good afternoon, and I apologize for being 8 minutes late. This is the first time this committee has ever started late, and I want to extend my humblest apologies to those waiting. However, I did bring donuts. For those of you who are unaware, Staten Island has its own version of Dunkin' Donuts, Country Donuts, which is similar in every way except for the fact that it's more delicious than Dunkin' Donuts. The eggs that you would eat are actually fresh and come from a chicken and not from some sort of canned powder. There are a number of variety there celebrating St. Patrick's Day. I believe there's Lucky Charms on some of the donuts. Others are Boston cream. So by all means, please don't hesitate. In fact, if you guys want to get one now, I'll wait. If you guys want to, please do. Because the first question is going to be, I want you to describe them in your testimony.
I'm just assuming you guys are going to talk a while, so.
So I am Council Member Joseph Borelli, and I'm Chair of the Committee on Fire and Emergency Management, also a donut connoisseur. I am today joined by my colleagues, council members. Well, no one's here. We're here to discuss the oversight topic of EMS worker safety. We always start with a joke, but we are involved in a very serious topic today. Examining this issue is of particular importance today as the number of assaults against EMS workers appears to have increased in recent years, with 87 such assaults having occurred in 2018. We have heard a number of brutal incidents where we've unfortunately seen videos of EMS workers being violently attacked when trying to provide medical care to patients. As EMS first responders are often the front line of responding to 911 calls for the individuals with emotional disturbances or other mental health problems, it is essential that as a city we can work continuously to ensure the safety of these vital public servants. To that end, today the committee hopes to explore the steps that the fire department has taken and plan to continue to take moving forward to ensure that paramedics and EMTs are receiving the necessary training and resources to be protected when doing their job. This may include professional training, de-escalation, self-defense tactics, or funding for protective vests. Ultimately, we are here to support these first responders and work to avoid further increases of assaults against EMS workers. I would now like to ask those members of the administration who plan to testify, please state your name for the record. Raise your right hand if it doesn't have a donut as the committee counsel administers the oath.
Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this committee and to respond honestly to council member questions? Thank you.
That's nice of you all. Please begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Borelli and all the council members present. My name is James Booth, and I am the Chief of EMS for the Fire Department of the City of New York. I'm joined today by Elizabeth Cassio, Chief of Staff, and Lillian Bonsignor, Chief of the EMS Academy. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today about protecting EMS members from job-related violence. EMS members in New York City provide life-saving care in a dynamic environment. They work in every area of the city, and they face new challenges every day. Unfortunately, sometimes those challenges include being threatened or even being assaulted during the course of a response. The fire department emphasizes that safety of our members is paramount at all times. The members are trained to minimize risk and to deal with dangerous situations when they arise. As a department, we are always looking for ways to enhance the safety of our members. The mission of EMS is to provide emergency medical care to the members of the community who are in need of help. As a general rule, we encourage our members to de-escalate the situation rather than act with force. However, operating in dangerous situations means that, on occasion, it may become necessary as a last resort in the face of imminent harm for members to employ an appropriate degree of force to protect themselves. EMS members receive training when they first enter the job, as well as periodic training throughout the remainder of their career. New members receive instruction in a segment called Street Smarts that teaches the importance of physical positioning during a response. The subtitle of the Street Smarts presentation is Protecting Yourself in a Continuously Changing Environment, and it addresses a wide variety of potentially dangerous situations such as aggressive patients, false calls to lure members, and dealing with animals. It provides instruction about surveying the scene, maintaining egress, continuing communications at a crowded scene, and maintaining situational awareness. The Street Smarts program also provides basic instruction on gangs that operate in New York. The training covers issues such as approaching an incident with caution, noting egress and secondary exit points, dealing with potential danger of, and dealing with potential danger by removing agitators. Members learn techniques such as observing the location before exiting the vehicle, clearing an exit path that allows retreat and if necessary, maintaining an appropriate distance from onlookers, and owning the scene. Throughout the training, the instruction emphasizes that a member's safety is of the utmost importance. As the presentation puts it, your life comes first. EMS members also receive training on techniques borrowed from law enforcement regarding the use of verbal judo. This is a procedure employing communications tools to de-escalate a situation that has become heated, and using judgment to decide when to find safety. They learn tactical communication strategies designed to elicit voluntary compliance from members of the public. This includes instruction on using language, inflection, tone, and nonverbal cues to control a situation. The training also focuses on the importance of communication and providing the patient with an explanation of what is happening in order to make the patient more likely to accept care without complication. Members also receive a training on the therapeutic communication derived from the New York State Department of Health curriculum. They learn to control a situation with a calm approach in order to obtain the trust and cooperation of the patient and onlookers, minimizing the risk of a confrontation. This curriculum addresses specific approaches for different types of patients, including communicating with elderly persons, with a child, with the hard of hearing and or deaf patients, or visually impaired patients and others. Once on the job, EMS members complete training periods to refresh what they've and to explore new material. In addition to the extensive refresher they receive every 3 years, they receive an additional Bureau of Training update that covers new policies, equipment, and rotating training topics. The topics for 2019 Bureau of Training update will include a review of tactical communications and a refresher on the Street Smart curriculum. In approaching the scene, members are able to refer to the premise history from a location of a call. If a computer-aided dispatch notification indicates the presence of violence or weapons or combative individuals, members may notify the police department and await the arrival of law enforcement officers before approaching the patient. However, because members are sometimes encounter dangerous situations without the presence of law enforcement, operational protocols also enable members to remove themselves from danger. This is the preferred method of dealing with a threat of physical danger. Members are instructed to alert their supervisors and law enforcement and, if necessary, retreat from the scene. In a situation where members are attacked with physical violence, they have the ability to use an appropriate amount of force to protect themselves and to get to safety. There are 2 different radio calls that may be appropriate for members who need help, who are in danger, when they both trigger the immediate response of the nearest EMS unit and officers, as well as the police. We have a great deal of confidence in our training and operational protocols. However, we also know that our approach to safety must evolve based on what we see in the field. This administration has been proactive about strengthening protections for our members. In 2015, we worked with our member unions, with Senator Marty Golden, and with Assemblymember Joel Lentil to pass bipartisan legislation making any assault against an on-duty EMS member a felony punishable by up to 7 years in prison. In 2018, working hand in hand with our union partners, the department announced that all FDNY ambulances would feature decals prominently displayed promoting the strong penalties for assaults against EMS members. The first ambulances to receive those decals were the ones in use at Station 26 up in the Bronx. Station 26 was home to EMT Yadira Arroyo, a 14-year veteran of the department who was struck and killed in the line of duty in 2017 while attempting to protect her partner and stop the theft of her ambulance. The decals serve as a reminder to anyone who assaults EMS personnel that they will face severe punishment. We've also made proactive changes to our training and equipment that are designed to enhance member safety. The Mental Performance Initiative training, which currently focuses on a member's individual mental well-being, has been adapted to include de-escalation techniques and instruction on resetting a conversation that has become hostile. We've made design changes to the radios carried by the EMS members to make it easier for them to monitor police activity and facilitate with each other and the local precinct. As we analyzed incidents of assault in the recent years, we zeroed in on a number of instances that members were spit upon. We looked for solutions to protect our members from this repulsive occurrence. We're now in the process of acquiring spit hoods for use for patients in this situation. The fire department serves the people of New York, and the backbone of this department is its members who save lives every day. We will always continue to look for ways to improve the safety of our members. We will be happy to take your questions at this time.
Thank you very much. I certainly appreciate your testimony. Is the donut good?
The donut is appropriate, sir. Thank you.
Do we have a problem with EMS assaults?
Yes, I believe we do.
How much money does the department spend annually on either equipment or training to protect EMS personnel from assaults?
I'll defer to the Chief of Training on the financial issue and training, sir.
Thank you very much.
I couldn't give you a number amount as far as how much we spend, but we do put a lot of effort into making sure that
Is learning verbal judo part of the training program, or is that a separate training? In other words, is that part of the initial training to become an EMS a paramedic or an EMS agent, or is that a separate training that was done in response to an assault?
So verbal judo is covered under a presentation we call tactical communications. We've been doing this presentation for at least 8 years now. We did update it as time goes on and we see different problems in the field, we will update it. But it is focused on verbal de-escalation and controlling a scene verbally, as well as situational awareness. It is coupled with a presentation called Street Smarts, which has always been a presentation that we give to our new employees as well. That particular one talks about how to remain safe, how to remain aware in field situations. For example, positioning yourself, making sure there is a way out at all times, being sure that you have your radio available to you. We talk about safety in other areas as well, subways and hallways, and where to stand in front of a door. We do everything in our power during these presentations to emphasize retreat, right? So we don't want our people hurt, and we work in a very emotionally elevated situation many times. So the thing that we emphasize during this training is de-escalate if you can, and we give them strategies and tactics to do so. If it seems as though those tactics are not going to help, call for help and retreat to safety. And we make sure that all of our members understand that's what we want from a training perspective. We want them to retreat to a safe place.
Do we know the number of assaults on EMS workers in 2018?
Yes, we do. There's 117, sir.
Do we know the number during 2017?
Yes, sir, 166.
166?
166.
And do we know from 2016?
97.
Is there any rationale of why there was a gigantic increase from 2016 to 2017?
It could be improved reporting strategies. There could also be additional assaults in that period of time.
And historically, just roughly over the last 10 years, what has the average assaults per year been?
I can't give you 10 years, sir. I can give you the numbers back to 2015, and then we'd have to do the math.
Okay.
So in 2015, it was 79. 2016, it was 97. 2017, 166. Last year, 117. This year to date, 9.
So we're on pace this year for a good year, I would say, so far, but that doesn't answer for... What were the increased reporting strategies that you mentioned?
We made workplace violence, we have an additional report that we have now put in play. In the past, it was an unusual occurrence report that sometimes didn't actually hit all the marks that we need. So now we have a separate workplace violence policy, and we have a separate workplace violence report that goes to the OSHA coordinator and the workplace violence coordinator within the fire department. So there's more awareness of the need to document these incidences.
But still, over the last 2 years, there's a pretty significant rise from the previous years. You're talking minimum 20% or so.
Yes.
Okay. Have we given EMS workers masks over the years?
We provide the members of EMS with a number of two different types of masks. We provide them with an N95 mask. It's almost like a surgical mask, and that's to protect them from tuberculosis and airborne issues and when they encounter a patient who has a communicable disease. We've also given the members of EMS, since I believe 2001, after the Trade Center, we gave them the Millennium MSA mask, which works on it looks like more of a military-grade mask for exposure to tear gas, airborne contaminants, dust, particles to protect their respiratory system in general when they go into an environment such.
Before the masks, the first mask you mentioned was given, how many EMS workers were stricken with tuberculosis in a year?
I couldn't reference that number, sir.
Was it 118?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
So, I mean, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that when we had a problem that was comparatively smaller, the department was pretty eager to give some equipment to address a problem. Now we have an issue where there's 118 people in the past year and 166 the year prior. Has anything physically been given to EMS workers to prevent injuries from assaults?
So what we're in the process of doing is that we've already described that when somebody is in an environment where they're going to be physically assaulted, we would prefer them to extricate themselves from the environment as best they can. If they can take their patient with them, that would be great. When we have an individual who has been contained and or restrained by law enforcement, the spitting comes to mind. Anybody can spit while they're handcuffed or restrained. So we are in the process of purchasing a spit hood. I have a sample here that I could show you, and it is a mesh hood that basically is fitted over the patient's...
I'm not getting a good idea. I think you might have to... You might have to give us...
Do you really want
no,
me to?
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Because I will.
No, I'm kidding.
So the hood is basically to keep the individual who is spitting at them from spitting at them. They'll spit, but it'll stay in the hood. So we're in the process of purchasing that and rolling that out. There's some training that's involved because anytime you put anything near a patient's airway, over their head, near their mouth, their nose, there's always an opportunity for complication. So we want the training to be appropriate, we want the awareness to be appropriate, and the use to be appropriate.
So in your 8th paragraph of your testimony, you talked about the interactions between EMS and NYPD. I guess the first question I have is, on a percentage of calls, how often is a response with the NYPD triggered, stemming from an stemming from a 911 call?
I don't know the actual number. I can tell you it is less than when I was on the ambulance.
But is it a fraction of the calls? Is it half the calls? Is it, ballpark?
I couldn't put a number on it, sir, for you.
Is there, and I know you mentioned if an EMS worker is being faced with a potential assault situation, there is a radio code to call in additional units and the police. Is there a code in the 911 system that will automatically do that at the call time?
If in fact we have information that there is an event occurring at the assignment where the ambulance is responding to, the dispatcher, if available, will record that information in the job text, and that will be conveyed to the unit that's responding if it's available to the dispatcher. Use caution, there's a fight at the scene, there's a shooting, the perp might still be there, things along those lines. Absent that information to the dispatcher to provide to the ambulance crew, we're going to rely on their training, their observation when they pull into the block, when they look at the street, in order to make an informed decision of whether or not it's safe to actually approach the location or not, or they're going to need to wait for the police.
In your experience, if someone called 911 and they said that it seemed to be an emotionally disturbed person behaving erratically on the sidewalk, would that trigger an NYPD and EMS response?
Yes, and an NYPD response to emotionally disturbed persons is I would say, all the time.
So I was in the state legislature, and I actually remember some of the bills that were passed. How many people since 2015 have been charged and prosecuted with assaulting an EMS worker?
I cannot give you back to 2015, sir, but I can tell you that in the year of 2018, we have a record of 21 arrests. Some of those cases are in the criminal justice system. Others have been handled with criminal summonses. And that's where we are for 2018, sir.
And just going back to the equipment, the masks were done sort of reactionary in response. Are there any instances where the FDNY was proactive in giving equipment to EMS workers before incidents became problematic?
Yes,
And the 9/11 masks certainly are an example of that, but...
Right. So before the incidences became problematic, in the process of purchasing a new radio system and a communication system, we have just recently rolled out the Motorola APX 8000 portable radio. In the planning phases of that, in the programming of that radio, we organized the police frequencies directly adjacent to the EMS frequency with the turn of a knob without having to look at the radio. The older radio, you had to navigate your way through several screens, and it was very, very difficult to get to a police frequency if you needed emergent help. This radio has streamlined that process, so if you, sir, were working in Lower Manhattan today, you would be on the Lower Manhattan EMS frequency. If you were to be a victim of an assault or an aggressive patient, you could turn the radio 2 or 3 clicks and you'd be right on the police frequency of the police officers that are actually in the police cars, in the precinct where you are engaging in this activity at this point. And the radio announces where you are. So you don't have to look at the radio. If you turn that knob, it'll tell you Manhattan South, Manhattan Central, 17th Precinct, 18th Precinct. That is an enhancement that we planned on with the communications equipment to get you help. One other thing we did is, in previous episodes of the portable radio, when you hit the emergency alert beacon on the radio that sent out an emergency message that you were in distress, a 9-digit radio number came up on the dispatcher screen. We had to look and see who had that 9-digit radio. This administration has used technology to now link that radio with that individual EMS member by their badge number and their name. So I know that if Chief Booth hits the emergency alert beacon, my beacon goes off. The dispatcher knows they're looking for Chief Booth. They're just not looking for anybody. They're looking for me specifically. So that enhances accountability and safety.
Thank you. I just want to recognize we're here also with Council Members Brannan and Cabrera. Nice to see you guys. And you have a question? Okay. I just have 2 more, then I'll hand it off. You made me forget what I was going to say, you know?
Just impress you that much.
How many of the 118 or 166 from 2017, just rough averages, how many of those assaults took place in the presence of a police officer?
I don't have that information, sir.
Is it more likely or less likely that the assaults happen in the presence of a police officer?
I don't have the information, sir, to make the reference.
Do you think that there are other fire departments and agencies that also handle EMS around the country that do a better job in protecting EMS workers?
I don't know if they do a better job. I'm sure they're confronted with the same issues that we are confronted with, and we'd be interested in learning anything we could from another agency. Just because we do it a lot more doesn't mean we do it better, sir. So anything they could teach us, we'd be interested in.
Councilmember Cabrera, questions first?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I just had a simple question. You were talking about technology. Have any vendors approached you with new technology coming in the horizon?
So first of all, it's good to see you again, sir. I've
Likewise.
met you before.
Good to see you, Chief.
I do not deal directly with vendors. Technology-wise, we have a medical equipment committee and a research and development group that deals with any type of device that's carried on either fire apparatus or an ambulance in the fire department.
Okay.
So, no, sir. The answer to your question is no.
Okay, and then in terms of training, has for the new class, has there been any changes in the training versus previous years? Anything in the curriculum, in the training that has changed?
I'm going to defer to Chief Bonsignor from the
Okay.
Bureau of Training.
Thank
Good
you,
afternoon,
Chief.
sir. There actually has. So we've added several things to our curriculum, including enhancing the street smarts and tactical communications presentations that they get. We did also include something called Mental Performance Initiative that Chief Booth mentioned during his opening remarks, and that really teaches about how to gain self-awareness, how to gain self-control in a heated environment. So basically how to reset a situation when things are starting to get out of control. So that's been included in all of our new employee classes as well.
And do we have empirical data substantiating that methodology, this new methodology in terms of the interaction they have with whoever they're coming with?
This initiative was based right out of military and sports environments, because they're two very highly emotional areas, and we, like Chief Booth was saying, we're interested in learning from everywhere that we can. And that level of unlocking your best potential, resetting your emotions during a highly elevated or stressful situation, we found to be helpful. So during our coursework, our students are introduced to stressful environment that they would see normally in the field. Of course, it is a training environment, so we can't be, as you know, we can't put them in the field to do this, but we run them through coursework. Then we give them this information, and then we give them some practice on box breathing, physical reset, self-talk, things like that, and then we run them through the situations similar to that again, and we have seen positive results there. We are also, not for only our new employee classes, but for our EMS membership in total, working on a de-escalation video that we could put up on something we call Diamond Plate, which is our training platform. So we have an AV unit that is working on that currently. And we're also, during this one-day training that we call Bureau Training Updates, we're giving all of our EMS members training on street smarts and de-escalation techniques through tactical communications.
You know, one of my experiences that I had, you know, I was involved in 9/11 and right there in Ground Zero, and also with Flight 587. I've been in a lot of Haiti, a lot of places where you had critical incidents. And one of the things that I value and is the debriefing piece, that whenever you encounter critical incidents, there's an opportunity for debriefing. Do you have that standardized? Is there a systematic way that every time one of the EMS workers encounters violence, encounters, you know, a critical incident, something that is very potent in terms of their, you know, impacting their mental health, do we have something that is standardized, where they have an opportunity to talk about it, debrief, that is not left by chance?
The simple answer to that, sir, is yes. We have a counseling services unit. We have counselors that are available, peer counselors, as well as higher trained professionals, that if we had gone to a substantial event, where we had a lot of fatalities, or we had a very stressful situation, or the members were assaulted, or God forbid, a child in a bad situation. We're very aware of the mental health needs of our members, and they have the ability to avail themselves to that. And we also have the supervisors during the R&R period, the rest and rehabilitation period, after a large event, we evaluate the members and basically see if they're squared away. And if they're not, they're able to seek those services, and then we follow up with them. That's incumbent upon their officer to keep an eye on them.
So who does the request? The EMS worker or the supervisor might see some flags and say, hey, we got a situation here? Because, you know, usually in NYPD, fire department, EMS, I mean, the posture is usually one of, I'm strong, people look to you for strength. So there's, you know, defenses that you build up to be able to cope. I'm just curious as to, is there a mechanism in place that if you start seeing red flags, we could deal with it early on? So, you know, the post-traumatic stress that they're dealing with, or the onset of it, is dealt with early on, because, you know, as you know, it gets more complicated as it develops.
Yeah, so either or, sir. Either the member can make application and look to get into these programs, or the officer that supervises them can make these observations and see that maybe they're not 100%, or that there's something going on in their life that they may need assistance with, and they can route them to get the assistance that they need.
Have you ever done a survey with EMS workers? This is my last question, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the time. A survey to assess what kind of extra services EMS workers would like to have in terms of support, of, you know, extra support.
Have we ever done an actual survey? Under my tenure the past 4.5 years, sir, we have not done that survey. I know in the past EMS had some issues that needed to be addressed, and they were addressed through the counseling services program. During those periods of time, there was data collection that was many years ago, sir. So that's what I can speak to. Okay.
It'd be kind of interesting to do a survey and see, hey, these are, you know, what other services would you like to have the support? Because, you know, it's a very intense, you were talking about the new, I forgot the name.
Performance.
What is it?
Mental Performance Initiative.
We could use that here at the council too. But so it'd be interesting to see if there's anything else. So you have an exchange of ideas. It's free information. Right. You know, it's hot off the press. You're dealing with them firsthand. So I want to thank you. Thank you for all that you do. Keep up the good work, and I'll turn it back over to the chair. Thank you for the extra time.
And I'll just give it to Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Chair. Just really quickly, I mean, not so much data-driven, but just anecdotally, I mean, over the past 10, 20 years, how's the game changed for people on the job in EMS?
I think the game has changed with the workload that we're faced with, the amount of assignments they're exposed to, and the many things that they have to manage while they're treating a patient. We didn't have K2 20 years ago. We didn't have substances like that cause people to engage in the activities that they engage in. So that's being one of the things. I'm sure there are others, but that's one of them.
And the additional trainings that you've mentioned, those have come to be over the past how many years? William?
The training is always developing. I can tell you.
But I mean, with these added sort of dealing with the public kind of.
So over, I would say over the last 2 years or so. Okay. I've been at the academy for 3 years, almost 3 years now, and that's one of the first things that we started to work on. So 2 years, it's up and running. 3 years ago, we started working on it. And we continue to look for other opportunities to teach our members to you know, be safe at all times.
And I mean, from the days when you were riding in an ambulance till now, I mean, how much has it changed on the streets?
I think the work of dealing with ill and injured people is always going to be what it is. I think that the environment that they're encountering is ever evolving and changing. It is different from 1983 when I came on the job to what it is now as far as the population of the city, the diversity of the city, the different customs in the city. They're dealing with a cornucopia of issues in their daily activities.
Sure. Well, thank you.
I just have a few more for you. What information is tracked when there's a violence report? What information is tracked as far as the injuries and as far as the prosecution of the potential assaulter?
The injuries are documented on a line of duty injury report that goes to, that's a Bureau of Health Services document. The other document is a workplace violence report, and that outlines the basic description of the event, who was injured, who wasn't injured, the perpetrator's name, and things along those lines. Those two documents contain the activity, the dealings of that event.
Is there any tracking that is not restricted by HIPAA of the injuries? In other words, can you tell us how serious the injuries are or how unserious they are?
I think once the person enters the Bureau of Health Services environment, we're basically precluded from knowing anything other than their full duty or their out line of duty or their modified duty based on their injury. No, I'm not really available to look and say, well, is the arm broken in 4 places or is it just a sprain?
So out of say the 117, how many required a modification of their duty status?
I don't have that information, sir.
When were EMS workers outfitted with ballistic vests?
I would like to say roughly 20 years ago, sir.
And how were they stowed in the ambulance? Are they worn? Are they required to be worn? Are they stowed until needed?
They're at the member's discretion, and they are stowed in their equipment bag or other suitable location inside the ambulance until they're needed.
Is there a shelf life with ballistic vests?
I've been told that there is a shelf life. I'm not an expert on shelf life, but each manufacturer would dictate what their product can and can't do.
Do we know if all the vests are within their shelf life, their manufacturer's suggested shelf life?
I do not have the knowledge that each and every vest is within the manufacturer's shelf life, so no.
And the last allocation funding from the city for the purchase of vests was in 1998, 99?
No, sir. The vests are purchased as we hire new members. So when we hire a new class of probationary members, they're able to be outfitted with the vest, so we continue to buy vests.
Are there certain types of calls that are more likely to generate a police response in addition to EMS? In other words, if there's a domestic violence situation, I imagine that would automatically trigger a police response as well. But are there other situations where, just from experience, you could ascertain that there's more likely to be a violent incident at this type of response versus any other? A kid falls off a bike, you're not going to send the police, right? But if someone's injured in the process of a crime, does that trigger some automatic response?
In my experience, yes. If the 911 operator is in receipt of information that says the person is a victim of a crime, or there's an ongoing aggressive act at the scene, or there's an emotionally disturbed individual that is endangering themselves or others, that is more likely to generate a police response.
Okay, I think that's it that I have for you guys. Thank you very much. Take some donuts on the way.
Thank you for the donuts, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Next, we will have Mr. Oren Barzali and Michael Greco of Local 2507. always nice to see you guys.
Oh, yeah. Good circumstances.
I guess we will start with Mr. Barzali.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to speak here today. My name is Oren Barzilay, President of FDNY EMS Local 2507, uniformed EMTs, paramedics, and fire inspectors. Providing pre-hospital patient care can be dangerous. EMTs and paramedics face several health and safety risks during each and every shift. EMTs and paramedics suffer work-related fatalities more than 2 times more frequently than the national average. Transportation-related injury is 5 times greater than the national average. While willing to accept the inherent risks associated with their chosen profession, they should not be expected to accept being assaulted as part of providing emergency care to the sick and injured. EMT Yadira Arroyo, a mom of 5, was crushed to death under the wheels of her ambulance, and her partner was injured after they tried to shoo the man off the back of the ambulance. On August 10, EMT Stephen Field and EMT Timothy McGurk, which are sitting behind me, responded to a call in Brooklyn. Upon entering the premises, standing side by side with NYPD, shots rang out, striking the officer 3 times, missing our members. Our members treated Officer Nguyen without hesitation or concern for their own safety. These members received citations for their heroic efforts by the NYPD. December 12th, Brooklyn, an incident that was caught on video at which 2 city EMTs suffered serious injuries when an angry man assaulted them as they responded to an emergency medical in Brooklyn. That incident came just a few days after 2 EMTs responded to a call in Far Rockaway, Queens, finding themselves confronted an irate man with a knife who attempted to slash them. While transferring patient to a hospital stretcher, patient became agitated and violent and bit the member, saying, "I have AIDS. I hope you get it and die." While escorting a patient into an emergency department, a patient became verbally abusive and struck a member with a metal cane in the head. After starting an IV on a patient and administering medication, patient became irate and punched the member in the face and pulled out an IV, causing blood to be splashed all over the member. While sitting in an ambulance with window open, a person walked up to the vehicle, punched the member in the face, and then proceeded to choke him until he passed out. As you can see, these incidents run the gamut of criminal behavior. In 2018, EMS personnel suffered 156 assaults. That translates to 1 incident every 56 hours of the working year. To compound this dire situation, the Fire Department Bureau of Investigation often prosecutes and fines members who find it necessary to restrain combative, violent individuals. In 2015, the state legislature upgraded assaulting a pre-hospital provider to a Class D felony, punishable by up to 7 years of incarceration. These men and women are deserving of protection as well as respect. However, when assaults occur, in most incidents, the district attorney, without regard to the aforementioned respect and protection, will attempt to enter into a plea bargaining agreement that reduces the charge to a low class of misdemeanor. The presiding judge often sets the case to no bail and releases the perpetrator on ROR. The true issue at hand lies in the fact that prosecuting offenders and affixing warning stickers to ambulances is reactive, not proactive. I have made numerous suggestions to the department that would allow my members to better protect themselves in a protective manner. Training members in tactical communication skills would empower the provider with an inventory of skills to better diffuse confrontations, de-escalate potential violence, and better diffuse confrontations. which will also generate voluntary compliance. Also, in conjunction with tactical communication training, a course of self-defense should be instituted. A tailored self-defense course will primarily teach the member how to create space to escape a threat, secondarily, allow the member to protect themselves, and finally, if absolutely necessary, neutralize the life-threatening situation. The replacement of outdated ballistic vests is so long overdue. Expired body armor does not provide adequate protection against deadly force. These suggestions have been largely ignored by the FDNY. The problem of assaults on EMTs and paramedics will not resolve itself. As a result of this department's benign neglect, the EMS profession has no lessons learned, no best practices, and no reliable interventions to reduce the risk of violence or violence-related injuries. The idea of educating and warning the public about the consequences of assaulting an EMT or an EMS personnel has failed. The only viable option is adopting the enumerated training modules. Adopting these ideas may just prevent another member from being seriously assaulted or murdered. While sitting here and hearing the department's testimony, it's been 2 years. In 2 weeks, it will be 2 years since Yadira Arroyo was murdered. Other than the department installing 10 units with a Vista system, which automatically disengages the ambulance when a threat is present. That's 10 out of hundreds of units. When an individual gets assaulted, there's a human nature of a reaction. It's natural to respond when somebody spits on you or punches you in the face. Yet when our members respond, they're disciplined. The city needs to identify our members. The department needs to identify our members. We had members terminated for protecting themselves. They spoke about a Street Smart program. That's a program that should be taught at junior high school. It's for the layperson. Slides are not going to teach anybody anything. It's taught by one of my colleagues and other EMS members. We need professionals to give these classes. We need advanced classes, not some slides, not some projections. People who know how to diffuse and de-escalate situations. There was a question raised about CSU on debriefing. There's no debriefing. We can hardly maintain our call volume now. Our members have no time to go debrief. When there's major disasters, mass casualties, our members get no debriefing. We've asked for that numerous times. Counseling service unit, yeah, it's offered to our members, but you have to burn your sick time or vacation time to go see them. It's not provided on the department. Many of our members don't report these assaults because of a lack of action that's done by the department or the police department, the district attorney's office, all parties involved. It builds a tradition of inaction to cause our members to report these incidents. There's no reasons our members are sitting at street corners at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. The department needs to take our people off the streets in high crime neighborhoods and put them in safe houses. Another question that was asked if PD responds to all our calls. The police department does not respond to all our calls. They do not have the resources as well to respond to all our calls. There's a code that comes in with every EMS run. In every job, it's printed. Command Order 12, NYPD not necessary on this run. And on many of these instances is where the assaults take place. Your routine sick job can turn into a nightmare. That's it for me.
Mike, would you mind if I ask just questions, just to follow up?
Yeah,
along?
no, of course.
I just want to go over this, the disciplinary procedures for EMS workers who use force. So members have been terminated for using force?
We had an incident last year, and Mike will go into depth since he deals with the discipline aspect of our job.
Yeah, we've had a member terminated after after the patient spit on her. The oath and the DOH ruled that due to the fact that it was a second punch, that it's not good. So they started terminating her. And it's not just termination.
But other members have been fined?
Fine. I have one case now. It's lack of investigation, really. I have one case going on right now. 2 members, the patient was restrained by one arm onto the stretcher. So uses the right arm, and this is the story as told by the members and one of the triage nurses. Used the arm, started punching. He ended up putting his hands on him. Patient complained, and actually one of the PD members who, I don't know why he was only restrained on one hand, but ended up contacting his patrol supervisor and saying there was probably something off here. So the Bureau of Investigation and Trials interviewed the officer, interviewed the members, the 2 members, never interviewed anybody else, and just assumed that the police officer's version, there's no video, so they assumed that one side, because he's a police officer, it must be correct. The exact words were, well, I believe him, why would he lie? I don't understand why anybody lies, but anybody knows about perception. There's the old cartoon where you got 2 men sitting with the number 6.
But how often are fines levied for this? A couple times a year, or?
Probably a couple times a year. And it all depends on what story comes out with beliefs. Because CCU, which is the Civilian Complaint Unit, anybody who calls in and makes a complaint, it's immediately looked at as, okay, we have to investigate the crew. So when they're investigating the crew, it's, again, a belief. This isn't a court of law, and they throw it in our face all the time. Well, we don't have the same preponderance of evidence. We don't the same rules of, beyond a reasonable doubt. For them, it's 51%, and it really comes down to who they believe. So if I'm in a fight for my life against somebody, but this person complains and
The video that went viral about 2 months ago, where it looks like it was a scrap. I mean, was anyone, any employee of the FDNY fined or disciplined or investigated?
Nobody was disciplined on that one. Okay. But now that video, I mean, I don't like to Monday morning call. I think that's 44 seconds of a perfect microcosm to what the department says they're doing and what's going on. That call was about 20 minutes. Nobody had the time to come over the radio and give a proper, they call it a 10-12. That's the explanation of the situation. Nobody gave a 10-12 of what was going on. It wasn't until 12 minutes into the call that a 911 caller gave the best example of what was going on. So because things get so crazy, it brings me to what I was, I didn't have anything prepared, but I'm just kind of answering the department. That radio training that they called proactive, it's not. Radios have been a problem since 9/11, if not before. So they've always had to readjust. That training for the members was mixed in a 4-hour CME, we call it, continuing education.
So is there a scenario where there could be a penalty against a member for use of force if he or she was first sort of accosted? Let's use the example you gave. So the patient is partially restrained. They grab your member. Your member uses some sort of force to free himself or herself, push the person away. Is there a scenario where they can be fined despite not having any training physically on how to, in other words, the police department has a standard of training for physical, we saw this play out with Eric Garner. I mean, the debate was over whether the officer in question used the chokehold
Correct.
that he or she was trained for. So in this case, there is no physical training, and a member can be held liable for using whatever means they can to sort of protect themselves.
The short answer is yes. That does happen. Because it all depends, again, who the department believes. If you interview 4 people, 2 people have one side, 2 people have another side. If the department believes the 2 people who are complaining against you, then yes. With no evidence whatsoever, it's just a matter of belief. And again, that particular situation, they talk about retreating. That member is on, that patient is on our stretcher. So if you retreat, it's claiming safety issue, and he's flailing around and he falls on that, now a different UOR is created where the patient got injured in your care.
Is there any civil liability with that for the member?
That I know of, I'm sure, in today's day and age with lawsuits.
There hasn't been any incident in your knowledge where a member was sued personally and then, you know,
So there are instances where the person decides to sue the department, there are, but it doesn't involve our members.
right, okay.
But for car accidents, for instance, our members get subpoenaed themselves by the victim all the time.
Are there any times where either an EMS worker or a member of the fire department, or any employee of the FDNY, let's say, transmit over the radio a request for the police to come, and they are unable to respond?
Yes.
Right, so there is plenty of scenarios where the determination was made that there ought to be a police officer present, and those resources, whether they're unavailable or, you know, or somebody in the decision-making chain decides not to send them. That has happened.
There's a mechanism for our members to call for help, but it goes through a 3rd person, a 4th person sometimes. So you're on the street, I'm your dispatcher, you call me, I now have to send a message to a police operator who is not directly over there with that frequency, for instance. She now has to send a message to that borough frequency telling him there's an emergency going on with EMS, send somebody. So there's a lag sometimes.
Even if the resource is available and a police officer is, 500 feet away around the corner, out of visual range, let's say, it would take a minute.
Unless they get on the police frequency, there's a delay.
Imagine texting your mother to text your father, who then text your brother to come help you.
I don't even
Right,
want to think about that.
and
Yeah.
that's why I use those same exact people for that reason, because that's what it's like.
Sorry, Mom, if you're watching.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Justin, do you have any questions? Michael, do you want to make a testimony?
I mean, just a couple of things. We touched on dispatch. The communication at PD is terrible. The spit hoods they're talking about, they've been in development for 2 years, and it gets stalled because of colors. They had a white and a black hood. Black hood they felt, and the white hood they felt was, certain racial connotations. So it got delayed while they asked the company to create a new hood with just a beige color. Those are the delays that they worry about. The radio strap, if you've ever seen a radio strap, it goes across. That's not only a choke hazard, it's also, it gets caught up on banisters, it gets caught up, it falls, it hits patients in the face, and our members are disciplined if they're not wearing their radio strap, even though they have a belt holder. And we've approached to the department and said, why can't you let them use the belt? And, well, no, you have to, it's an order. You have to wear the radio strap. So these are the sort of things, they asked about proactive, you asked about proactive. They're not. They're very reactionary. The debriefing that he touched on, it's a culture problem. You asked the question, I was going to start off with the joke, but instead I'll start it here. When you said when you guys were on the ambulance, what changes have, well, horse and buggies was one of them. Cell phones, audio recordings, internet, those are all the things that have changed. These are the people who sit up here that if this sort of stuff happened in 1983, they'd probably hit them with an oxygen bottle to get away. And we've been told in those, you guys have to know how to handle yourselves. It's different. With cameras nowadays, a 14-second clip, even though for the rest of the 10 minutes you were completely in the right, things have changed, and the people who are in charge, while they have good intentions, don't understand what's going on. A video on diamond plate they talked about, If you're gonna show me a de-escalation, that's their answer. I'm looking for a trained professional to come in and teach us how to de-escalate a situation, and you're gonna throw it on a 30-minute video that we have to watch on our own time when we're busy. The fire department, the firefighters, they train constantly. They get taken out of service, they get sent to Randall's Island, they practice their craft, they practice things. Because of our call volume, because of our understaffed, because we're running down 100 tours a day, we can't be taken off service. The counseling service they speak about, oh, they'll call us. First of all, there is no debriefing. And if we go to the counseling service, we might get the rest of the tour off. And if we need any other time, we don't have unlimited sick. So we get sent to the counseling service, and you need to use your own AL or your own sick leave to get that time. So they're more worried about their stats of running ambulance than they are about the safety of the members. That's... Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I thought you were finished.
No, you can give me a chance to talk, I'll keep going.
Oh, well, I just want to ask two quick questions. The first is about the number you gave for 2018. You said there was 156. That's different than the FDNY's number that they gave? Is there a discrepancy of...
That's the number they gave us.
Okay.
So if, as I was listening to it, in June of 2018, when those decals came out, there's a report that says as of June, there's 87 incidents by the department. So halfway through the year, we had 87.
Maybe one was a fiscal year, one was a calendar year, so but it doesn't seem like there's any big conspiracy or anything.
Yeah. And keep in mind, a lot of our members do not report all incidents.
Well, that was the next question. Out of the say, 156, what are the type and scope of the injuries that have been received?
Some of these injuries are permanent, are disabling. Our members had to apply for early retirement because of these assaults. Without going into too much details, a torn rotator cuff from somebody either punching you or pulling you. We have a member right now who's permanently disabled, young individual in their 20s, career over.
What do you estimate the percentage is of EMS workers who file an accident report for assault that end up being placed on some sort of duty modification?
So
All of them, or is it?
So we have a total of 10% people who are injured. As the year.
But as far as the assaults go.
As far as the assault, I don't know.
Right. If you're getting assaulted to the point that something hurts, I think there's a very good reporting nature where you have to miss work, because we go back to, again, with the whether we use our own time or not. So if you have a simple injury like a back strain, if you go line of duty injury, that time is not charged against your leave balance. So when it comes to needing time off and
So when someone's assaulted, there is an almost overwhelming likelihood that they will be out of service for the next week, day.
No, not an overwhelming, because he spoke about the far end of the spectrum, the really serious ones. To go to the other end, there's a lot of punching, there's a lot of spitting, there's a lot of kicking. You strap a guy in the ambulance to get kicked in the chest. It's become common nature that is where, when I tell you, 25% of those get reported. I could probably have these guys shake their head right now if you reported every time somebody has put their hand on you. No, because one of two things: nothing's going to happen. The PD might not arrest. Oh, it's our supervisors, the same ones who've been around for 30 years. Oh, back in our day, this was nothing, you know. So the little ones don't get reported because it becomes, PD's not going to do anything, and our supervisors aren't going to care. So if it's significant enough that there causes any injury to us that is recognizable at the moment, they will go out. But if it's just a slap in the face, you got spit on your chest, you got just punched in the chest, and there's no real physical injury, it's not worth the time and effort. That's the problem.
Point out we're joined by Councilman Maisel, who's hiding behind the donuts, which are available for his enjoyment.
Yeah, I'm trying to do my best not to look at them.
They got, some of them have Lucky Charms on them. They're very, very good.
I had the Lucky Charms.
I need a hole in my head.
Yeah.
Well, luckily the donuts have a hole already in them, so I don't have any more questions.
Yeah, and then they talk about, again, you let me go and I'll go. Their call types. We respond to numerous, and this is the call type: unknown. Then that's the call type, unknown. But no PD goes to that, to an
But is there
unknown.
then a procedure that the EMS worker, so in other words, if the call comes on as unknown, the EMS worker might by nature be more cautious, but is there a protocol where they should validate that it's a safe situation before entering?
No, we go over and say, we go over the air and X, there's no information. Instead of saying wait for PD or we're sending a boss, the answer we get over and over is check and advise.
Yeah.
So it's our job to figure out what the unknown, and then there's also the call type other, which actually is one of my favorite call types because of the extent of what an other could be. That means somebody on the phone went so crazy they don't even know how to categorize it, so they just send it as an other. But those are the dangerous calls. Those are the ones where you show up and you don't know what's gonna happen. And the verbal judo, the 2 years that they're giving new people, it's not enough seriousness into the training. They need to stop putting it with other things.
I almost think they don't take it seriously in the sense that they call it verbal judo.
Right. And it started out as a lieutenant, because it's a book, I believe. It started out as a lieutenant and higher type class that they're now incorporating into the lower. And I do believe the administration is on the right path. I don't want to knock the administration. Even Chief Bonsignor, she's great at the training aspect. She's great at her job. I just think some of the bureaucracy and the 2 years for a hood, the micromanaging of if I'm not safe in a radio strap and I have a belt, it should be my decision on how to go about that call. You give me a $300,000 ambulance. You give me an insane amount of drugs and an insane amount of autonomy to intubate, sedate, restrain, take care of cardiac arrests, and do all that. But when it comes to whether or not I can wear a belt or a strap, you have to micromanage that. When it comes to a uniform, you're going to tell me on which day I can wear a long sleeve and a short sleeve. It's
And
just,
rest assured that if I was hit in the face with a radio while I was in a stretcher, I'd file a complaint.
of course.
as well.
Yeah, and I'm on the side of, it's not the self-defense that I feel is 100% needed. And I don't want weapons for our members because, again, the training that comes with weapons, and we are the safe space for people to call. Self-defense, it should always be to get out. Scene safety and retreat is always the way to go. And if you do a self-defense course, the way they're gonna teach it, they're gonna have some guy who works in the Bronx who's gonna come make a little overtime. It's gonna be a 4-hour training that you must retrain. That's any self-defense. But conflict resolution, how to approach a patient, how to de-escalate a situation, if that's taught in a 4-hour class, dedicated, that would be more helpful. And I don't believe they're ready to bring in the experts. I think they're gonna turn around and ask some guy who might know somebody and they'll put it in a slide. A captain or a lieutenant should not be teaching.
So just my last question, considering the danger of the job, the number of assaults, the lack of interest the department seems to take with respect to preventing these type of assaults despite the rise, why do people stick around the EMS department, given the pay?
Because we love it. It takes a special person. A conductor on the Long Island Railroad had a heart attack today on my way in. St. Albans, they stopped the train for 45 minutes. They asked for a medical professional. I got up, I keep gloves in my pocket, and I've been doing this now for 2 years, and the vice president. That is the most exciting thing to me, because I get to go treat a patient. So 2 FDNY crews came in, took this guy to the hospital. That is why we do it, because despite all the problems, EMS, this is a call, this is a calling. A firefighter loves what he does. Police officers love what they do. We love what we do. So we will keep doing it. And if I had a council hearing that didn't mention the pay, that's weird. If you're gonna treat us like a service that gets beat up, that gets spit on, that gets punched, that gets whatever, and then tell me my job's not dangerous, tell me the work is different, we're gonna have issues.
Thank you very much, guys, both of you.
No.
Can we touch on the ballistic vest?
Oh, yeah, if you'd like to, yes, please.
So, I don't know if you saw the news this morning, out in Oregon. A paramedic sitting in an ambulance was stabbed, minding his own business. Our vests are so outdated. We've asked also for replacement policy. It falls on deaf ears. We have members with 20-year vests. studies have shown that weapons technology has advanced. Those vests are useless at this point. Bullets have advanced, guns have advanced. Our members are out there with no protection. And just to echo some of what Mike has said, this is a passion to our people. With all that falls on their lap, they take it and they move forward.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to testify? Being none, thank you.
Come on, Mike, they're gonna charge you.